Blue and red strobe lights were dancing violently against the white vinyl siding of my house. The kind of aggressive, strobe-light chaos that makes your stomach drop all the way to your shoes. And there I was, standing in my own driveway with my hands visibly shaking, not from cold, but from a mixture of rage and sheer disbelief, while two officers grilled me like I was a suspect in a felony robbery. Through the front bay window, I could see the silhouette of my 16-year-old daughter, Lily, pressing her hand against the glass, her eyes wide with that specific, hollow terror I hadn't seen since the night the doctors told us there was nothing more they could do for her mother. And standing across the perfectly manicured street, arms crossed over her chest like a disappointed schoolmarm, wearing a smug, tight-lipped grin that screamed victory, was Brenda Vance. To understand how a grown woman ended up weaponizing the police department against a grieving widower and his teenage daughter, you have to understand the sheer level of desperation I was operating under when I bought this house. My name is Elias Thorne, and 2 years ago, my world effectively ended when my wife, Elena, lost a brutal 3-year war against ovarian cancer. We had been living in this cramped, suffocating apartment downtown, a place that smelled permanently of rubbing alcohol and takeout food, where every single corner was a shrine to her illness. And after the life insurance finally cleared the bureaucratic hurdles, I knew I had to get Lily out of there. She needed a sanctuary, a place where the silence wasn't heavy with grief but light with possibility. So I poured every cent we had into buying a colonial-style home in Oak Haven Sanctuary, a neighborhood that promised safety, quiet streets, and top-tier access to Crestview Academy. On paper, Oak Haven Sanctuary was paradise. The kind of place where the lawns are cut on a diagonal bias and the air smells like fresh mulch and money. But I made the fatal error of not realizing that every paradise has a serpent, and ours was the self-appointed guardian of the community covenants, a 50-something divorcee named Brenda Vance. From the moment the moving truck's air brakes hissed in front of our driveway, she was there, materializing out of the shrubbery with a clipboard that looked like it had seen combat, lecturing the movers about the decibel level of their dollies and the precise angle of their ramp. I'm a structural engineer by trade. I deal with code compliance and zoning laws for a living. So I figured, okay, she's strict. I can handle strict. Strict is just another word for organized. But I had no idea that Brenda wasn't interested in organization. She was interested in domination. It started with the truck. I drive a heavy-duty GMC Sierra for work. It's immaculate, not a speck of mud on it. But it's a work truck, and apparently, to Brenda, a pickup truck in a driveway is akin to parking a burning dumpster on the front lawn. 3 days after we moved in, I walked out to find a neon orange sticker plastered to my windshield, not tucked under the wiper, but literally adhered to the glass, screaming violation, in a font size usually reserved for condemned buildings. The citation, issued by the Oak Haven Sanctuary HOA, claimed my vehicle was encroaching on the community easement visual corridor by exactly 3 inches. 3 inches. Now, looking back, I should have realized that a normal person doesn't carry a laser measuring tool in their purse to patrol driveways at 6 a.m., but at the time, I just felt that engineer's itch, that need to verify the data. I didn't get angry. I got precise. I pulled the property plat maps. I hired an independent surveyor, a guy I've used on 20 different commercial projects, to come out and stake the exact property lines with GPS precision. The results were almost poetic in their clarity. My truck was sitting a full 18 inches inside my property line, meaning Brenda's entire premise was visually and mathematically hallucinogenic. When I marched into the property management office, surveyor's report in hand, ready to do battle with the bureaucracy, the receptionist looked at me like I was speaking Aramaic. "Mr. Thorne," she said, scrolling through her database with a confused frown, "we don't have any record of a violation for your address. And furthermore, Ms. Vance isn't on the compliance committee. She's just the secretary. She doesn't have the authority to issue citations." That was the first crack in the facade, the first realization that Brenda wasn't just an overzealous volunteer. She was a fraud, printing fake tickets on her home printer to terrorize neighbors into submission. I started asking around, casually at first, chatting up neighbors while walking my dog, and the stories started pouring out like water from a broken main. Mrs. Gable, a sweet elderly lady 3 doors down, had paid $200 in cash to Brenda for a mailbox height infraction, that doesn't exist in the bylaws. Raj Patel, the guy on the corner, had been fined for unauthorized holiday decorations in July because he had a red wind chime. It was a racket, a petty, suburban extortion scheme. But as much as I wanted to expose her right then, I was distracted because Brenda had decided to shift her crosshairs from my truck to the one thing that was actually holding my family together, my daughter's music. Lily is a prodigy. I'm not just saying that because I'm her dad. She plays the piano with a kind of haunting maturity that she developed after watching her mother fade away, and playing was her therapy, her way of speaking when words were too heavy. We had established a routine. She practiced from 3:30 to 5 p.m., perfectly within the municipal noise ordinances, playing complex, beautiful pieces by Rachmaninoff that drifted through the house and made it feel like a home again. But then came the banging on the door, a sharp, authoritative rap that sounded like a SWAT raid. Brenda was standing there, radiating that toxic mix of perfume and self-righteousness, holding a decibel meter app on her phone that was clearly not calibrated. "Mr. Thorne," she sneered, looking past me at Lily, who had frozen at the keys. "This cacophony is disturbing the peace. We have rules about commercial noise pollution in residential zones." She wasn't just complaining. She was trying to classify a grieving teenager's piano practice as commercial noise pollution because, and I quote, "it sounds too professional to be a hobby." Over the next week, she logged 14 noise complaints against us. She was practically camping on the sidewalk, documenting every single note Lily played, terrorizing my kid to the point where Lily started closing the lid on the piano as soon as she saw Brenda's shadow pass the window. That was the moment the game changed for me. You can ticket my truck, you can annoy me, but you do not steal the only joy my motherless daughter has left. I decided to watch the watcher, and that's when I noticed the lights at the community clubhouse. The clubhouse at Oak Haven Sanctuary is this pseudo-fancy building near the pool, usually dark after 9 p.m., but I noticed the lights were blazing at midnight, then 2 a.m., then 4 a.m. One night, fueled by insomnia and suspicion, I took a walk with my binoculars. Don't judge me. Once a dad, always a perimeter checker, and saw Brenda inside, not working, not filing papers, but microwaving a frozen dinner and watching TV in the main lounge wearing a bathrobe. The realization hit me like a slap in the face. She wasn't just working late. She was living there. Once I saw her in that bathrobe, wandering the community center like it was her personal living room, the pieces of the puzzle didn't just fall into place. They slammed together with the force of a magnetic lock. I became obsessed with the logistics of it, tracking the flow of deliveries, the Amazon packages piled up by the side door addressed to B. Vance, care of Oak Haven office, the grocery delivery trucks stopping there on Tuesdays. I did a deep dive into the county clerk's records, pulling up property tax data and foreclosure filings, and there it was, black and white and devastating. Brenda Vance had lost her own home in the divorce settlement 6 months ago. She was technically homeless, squatting in the amenity center that our HOA dues paid for, playing the role of the neighborhood dictator while living like a fugitive in the castle she didn't own. But the rabbit hole went deeper, darker than just illegal occupancy. As the secretary, Brenda had access to the checkbook, or at least the debit card for petty cash and maintenance, so I exercised my rights as a homeowner and formally requested the financial ledger for the last 2 quarters. When the PDF arrived, it was a roadmap of petty theft. $50 here for office supplies that coincided with a grocery store receipt, $80 for cleaning chemicals that matched a charge at a liquor store, hundreds of dollars siphoned off the landscaping budget to pay for personal cell phone bills. She was bleeding the community dry, nickel and diming Mrs. Gable and Raj Patel with fake fines to cover her tracks, literally stealing from the people she was terrorizing. I knew I needed bulletproof evidence, the kind that stands up in court, not just hearsay, so I went full engineer mode. I installed a motion-activated security camera, completely legal, pointed at the public easement and the clubhouse entrance, to document her coming and going. For 2 weeks, I built a dossier that would make the FBI jealous. Timestamps of her sleeping there, video of her bringing in laundry, logs of her fraudulent spending. I was preparing to drop the hammer, but Brenda, sensing her control slipping, decided to escalate the war to a nuclear level. It wasn't enough to fine us. She wanted to destroy us. She started a whisper campaign, telling neighbors that I was an unstable alcoholic, that Lily was wild and unsupervised, implying that the reason my wife died was because I hadn't taken care of her properly. It was sick, twisted stuff. But then she crossed the final line, the one you can never uncross. She called the police on a Tuesday afternoon, claiming there was a domestic disturbance at my house, telling the dispatcher she heard screaming and saw me threatening my daughter. That brings us back to the driveway, to Officer Daly looking at my ID, while Brenda smirked from across the street. But here's the thing about bullies. They assume everyone else is as reactive and emotional as they are. When Officer Daly walked into my house, he didn't find a crime scene. He found a quiet, immaculate home with the smell of dinner cooking and a terrified teenager doing homework. I calmly explained the situation. I showed him the harassment logs, the fake tickets, and I saw his demeanor shift from suspicion to sympathy. He apologized, truly embarrassed, and left. But as he walked away, I looked at Brenda and didn't feel anger anymore. I felt a cold, calculating resolve. She had tried to swamp me. Now, I was going to bury her. I called Arthur Pence, the actual HOA board president, a nice guy who was totally asleep at the wheel, and told him we needed an emergency meeting regarding urgent financial discrepancies. I didn't mention Brenda by name. I just said the numbers weren't adding up and we needed a community audit. Arthur, panic-stricken at the thought of being liable, agreed immediately and set the meeting for the following Monday. Brenda, sensing a trap, tried to cancel it. She posted fake flyers saying the meeting was postponed due to plumbing issues. She called older residents telling them not to come, but I was one step ahead. I went door to door, looking every neighbor in the eye, Mrs. Gable, Raj, the young couple who just moved in, and told them, "You need to be there. Bring your checkbooks, bring your violation notices, trust me." I spent the weekend building a PowerPoint presentation that was less of a financial report and more of a criminal indictment. The night of the meeting, the clubhouse was packed, standing room only. The air was thick with tension, buzzing like a high-voltage wire. Brenda sat at the front table next to Arthur, clutching her clipboard like a shield, looking nervous but still arrogant, still believing she was the smartest person in the room. She had no idea that I had invited a special guest. Officer Daly, the same cop she had weaponized against me, was standing quietly in the back of the room, arms crossed, waiting. Arthur opened the meeting with some mumbling about budget overruns, and then he turned to me. "Mr. Thorne, you had some data to share?" I stood up, plugged my laptop into the projector, and the screen flickered to life. I didn't start with the money. I started with the video. The first slide was a compilation of security footage. Brenda entering the clubhouse at 11 p.m. in pajamas. Brenda brushing her teeth in the communal kitchen sink. Brenda hauling a mattress out of the storage closet. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Then, I clicked to the next slide. A split screen showing the HOA bank statements on the left and Brenda's personal expenses on the right. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady, echoing off the cheap acoustic tiles. "The reason our dues have gone up, the reason you're being fined for red wind chimes and 2-inch truck infractions, is not because of community standards. It's because Brenda Vance is funding her life with your money." I looked right at her. She was pale, ghostly white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She has stolen approximately $4,000 in 6 months, and she is currently squatting in this building illegally. The reaction in the room was visceral, a collective gasp that instantly morphed into a roar of betrayal. It was like watching a dam break. Mrs. Gable, usually the sweetest woman on earth, stood up, her hand trembling as she pointed a finger at the front table. "You fined me for my hydrangeas while you were stealing our money?" she shouted, her voice cracking with hurt. Raj Patel was on his feet too, waving a stack of fake citations. The illusion of Brenda's authority shattered instantly, dissolving into nothing but the pathetic reality of her crimes. Brenda tried to stammer out a defense, something about temporary hardship and administrative reimbursements, but Arthur Pence looked like he was about to be sick. He turned to her, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You told me you were protecting the neighborhood," he hissed, loud enough for the mic to catch. "Brenda, you're fired. Immediately. Get your things." But it wasn't just about losing a volunteer position. From the back of the room, Officer Daly stepped forward, the heavy thud of his boots cutting through the commotion. He walked straight up the center aisle, the crowd parting for him like the Red Sea. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, professional. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "I think we need to have a conversation about these financial records and your living arrangements. And I'm going to need you to step outside." Watching Brenda be escorted out of the meeting, her clipboard abandoned on the table, stripped of her power, stripped of her dignity, I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel that rush of pure vengeance. But looking at her slumped shoulders, seeing the terrified reality setting in that she was truly homeless and facing criminal charges, I just felt a deep, exhausting relief. It wasn't joy. It was the cessation of pain. The predator had been removed from the ecosystem. The fallout was swift and comprehensive. Brenda eventually pleaded guilty to embezzlement and trespassing. She avoided jail time by agreeing to full restitution and a suspended sentence, but she was banned from Oakhaven Sanctuary forever. She moved 2 towns over, living with a sister, and we never saw her again. But the vacuum she left behind was filled with something incredible. With the recovered funds and a unanimous vote to oust the old management company, the neighborhood transformed. We renovated the clubhouse, turning Brenda's illegal bedroom back into a proper community space. But the real victory, the one that makes my throat tight just thinking about it, was what we did with the surplus budget. Arthur proposed using the recovered money to start a community initiative, and they voted to name it the Elena Thorne Foundation. It's a scholarship program for music lessons. We bought a beautiful upright piano for the community center, and every Wednesday night, Lily goes down there. Not to be harassed, not to be silenced, but to teach. She teaches the neighborhood kids the basics, scales and chords, her laughter mixing with the clumsy, beautiful notes of children learning to create something. The very noise that Brenda tried to crush is now the heartbeat of the neighborhood. 6 months later, I was sitting on my porch, watching Lily walk home from the center, her step light, her smile genuine. A neighbor waved as they drove past. My truck parked legally in the driveway, unnoticed and unbothered. We had reclaimed our home. We had turned a fortress of petty rules back into a sanctuary. But it leaves me with a question that keeps me up sometimes. I destroyed a woman's life. Yes, she was a criminal. Yes, she was cruel. But she was also desperate, homeless, and terrified. Did justice require her total public humiliation, or was that just my own grief looking for a target? When someone weaponizes the rules to hurt you, how far are you allowed to go to hurt them back? Is protecting your family an absolute justification for ruthlessness? I look at Lily playing the piano, happy and safe, and I tell myself I did the right thing. But I want to know what you think. Did Brenda deserve the handcuffs and the shame, or should we have handled it with quiet mercy? Let me know in the comments. And remember, sometimes the monster under the bed is just a lonely person with a clipboard, but that doesn't mean you let them eat you. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and never let anyone silence your music.